My friend, have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Praying, reading the Bible, serving, doing your best to follow God, yet somehow everything feels wrong. Doors are closing, people are walking away, and you find yourself lying awake at night wondering, did I miss God's voice? Am I even on the right path? Let me tell you the truth, you're not lost, you're being led. You're not on the wrong path, you're just on God's path, and that's why it feels different. Because God's path is not designed to be comfortable, it's designed to make you complete. It's not about ease, it's about elevation. Today, I want to show you 7 powerful signs that prove you are walking on God's path, not your own, and most of them look nothing like what you expected. The first sign is that resistance rises. The moment you start walking in obedience, the battle begins. When you lived in compromise, the enemy left you alone, but when you surrendered to God's plan, you became a threat to darkness itself. Ephesians 6 verse 12 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood but against principalities and powers. So don't mistake difficulty for disapproval. The storm around you is not proof that God left you, it's proof that you've entered the fight. Resistance doesn't mean rejection, it's confirmation that heaven is backing you up. If life just got harder after you obeyed, it's because you finally stepped into the territory the devil doesn't want you to take. The second sign you're on God's path is that people start leaving. This one hurts the most. The friends who used to cheer for you grow silent. The family who once supported you now questions your decisions. You start to wonder, if I'm really following God, why do I feel so alone? But hear me, obedience exposes compromise. Your light makes others aware of their shadows. Jesus said in Matthew 10 verse 34, I did not come to bring peace but a sword. That sword doesn't just divide good from evil, it separates purpose from distraction. When God prunes your circle, He's not punishing you, He's protecting your destiny. He removes the ones who can't go with you to make room for the ones who will. If your circle is shrinking but your faith is growing, that's a sign you're right where God wants you to be. The third sign is that you're becoming unbothered by what used to control you. The drama that used to excite you now drains you. The gossip that once entertained you now grieves you. The need for validation that once ruled your heart is slowly fading away. You're not getting cold, you're growing up. Romans 12 verse 2 says, do not conform to this world but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's what's happening, you're being transformed. What used to trigger you now teaches you. What used to break you now builds you. You're no longer reacting from pain, you're responding with peace. When you'd rather pray than argue, forgive than fight, and rest instead of retaliate, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's proof your heart is being aligned with heaven. The fourth sign that you're on God's path is that you're being stripped before you're strengthened. You asked for promotion, and God gave you pruning. You prayed for blessing, and God allowed breaking. It feels cruel until you remember that John 15 verse 2 says, every branch that bears fruit, He prunes, that it may bear more fruit. God doesn't prune the dead, He prunes the fruitful. The things that are falling apart are not a punishment, they're preparation. He's removing what you can't carry into the next season. You think you're being buried, but you're being planted. You think you're losing, but you're being refined. Before God builds you up, He strips away everything that competes for His place in your heart. That pain you feel is not the end, it's the evidence that growth has begun. The fifth sign you're on God's path is that you're hearing Him more clearly in the silence. You used to need a worship concert, a sermon, or a crowd to feel His presence. Now you sense Him in the stillness, in the quiet moments when no one else is around. 1 Kings 19 verse 12 says that God was not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in a still small voice. Silence doesn't mean God has stopped speaking, it means He's speaking differently. When He stops shouting, it's because He's close enough to whisper. If you're craving solitude more than spotlight, reflection more than recognition, you're maturing. You're learning to listen to the whisper instead of chasing the noise. The sixth sign that you're on God's path is that you've started choosing obedience over outcome. You used to pray, God, give me what I want, but now you pray, God, give me what you want. That shift changes everything. You no longer measure success by what you gain but by how quickly you obey. You tithe even when it doesn't add up. You forgive even when they don't deserve it. You stay faithful even when you don't see results. That's faith in action. Faith doesn't wait for proof, it becomes the proof. When you obey without knowing how it will end, you're walking in true trust. You're saying, God, even if it costs me, I'll still follow. And that obedience unlocks blessings that comfort never could. Finally, the seventh and greatest sign, you're starting to look more like Jesus. Your reactions are softer. Your words are kinder. You don't respond out of ego but out of grace. You find yourself loving the unlovable, forgiving the unforgivable, and giving without expecting anything back. 2 Corinthians 3 verse 18 says, "We are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory." That's what this journey is about. The longer you walk God's path, the less you resemble the world and the more you reflect His heart. You stop living for applause and start living for purpose. You stop chasing comfort and start craving character. You're not just believing in God, you're becoming more like Him. So let me tell you this, my friend, if life feels heavy, lonely, or uncertain, you are not lost, you are led. The resistance you're facing, the people leaving, the stripping, the silence, all of it is proof that you're walking the narrow road. God's path doesn't always feel right, but it's always right. The world calls it struggle, heaven calls it shaping. Don't doubt the process just because it hurts. You're being transformed. You're being positioned. You're being prepared for something greater. So lift your head, keep walking, and stop questioning the path. Because this road that feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable, is exactly the one that leads to destiny. You're not wandering. You're walking on God's path, not your own.